Yeah, so good morning and thank you for joining us again at Classical Mechanics 1 at CMI. Today is the 18th meeting, 25th November 2021. We've just been answering questions from Siddhant Shah and Aryan Kusre. So Siddhant, please continue your question.
Sir, I was unclear about why we're using like the application of the matrix in the first place, like the exponential part of it. Like why we're doing that. I understand the calculations.
Yes.
And how it comes in, but like the entire exponential conversation about the exponentiation of the matrix E is to capital AT. That part I was a little unclear on, like why we're doing that.
Okay, let me perhaps it will help to have the formulae to refer to. So the overall picture as to why we are doing all of this is to understand the motion of the harmonic oscillator. And so the aim there is to solve the equation of motion. Now, in order to solve that equation of motion, we are faced with a second order differential equation with a linear second order differential equation, which we are not able to integrate straight away. All right. So we want to use a reduction to first order equation, which we may be able to integrate more easily. So that we did by splitting into two equations. Are you okay so far?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So I think here it will be helpful to share the screen. Second. Yeah. Yeah. So here are the equations. So we rewrote the second order equation as a pair of first order equations over here. 1 second. As you can see, I am not in my office.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, Ishan.
Sir, probably someone is there in the waiting room.
Okay. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I should admit that. Okay. Thank you for alerting me. Yeah. 1 second. Yeah. So returning to this formula, this is our pair of first order equations. So are you okay with this set of equations? They are equivalent to the original second order equation of motion which we had here. Now we recognize that this pair of equations can be written in matrix form if we define the column vector V as x comma p column vector and A as this 2 by 2 matrix. Now we draw an analogy. See, our aim finally is to solve the equation V dot is equal to AV. Okay, that is the original goal. Subject to some initial condition, V of t equal to 0 is some V naught. Yeah. Is it okay so far?
Sir, how do you come from x d by dt of xp like that matrix to the equation of SHM? That's the part I'm unclear on.
Okay. Let me go a step back then. See, the equation for simple harmonic motion is mx double dot is equal to minus kx. Yeah. So now we define P as mx dot. Yeah. Then we notice that P dot is equal to minus kx. Okay. Now we replace this one second order equation by these two first order equations written in a nice way. P dot equal to minus kx, we retain. P equal to okay, are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir. Now it makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, it makes sense. So the P equal to mx dot we rewrite as x dot is equal to P by M. Now we assemble those two equations in a convenient form in this place. So x dot will be given by the first row. So I dot this with that. I will get only the second term contributing P by M. Second row, P dot is equal to this thing dotted with that will give you minus kx. All right. Now we define this column vector as V. So we'll get dV dt is equal to AV. It's okay so far?
Yes, sir. Now the calculation I understand.
Okay. So is there anything you don't understand?
And only I didn't get why, like how from the SHM equation we got to the matrix form. But like now I'm clear on that, so now everything else I understand.
Okay. So this discussion is now served its purpose.
Yes.
All right. All right. Excellent. Okay. Any other questions before we continue our pendulum activities? Okay. Good.
But sir,
yes,
I would actually
yes.
like to just clarify one thing
Yes,
though.
please.
Like deriving the solution, this was reasoning sort of by analogy, right? Like the
Yes.
intuition from, let's say, y dot is equal to AV for A is like a scalar versus like, you know, now upgrading the
Vector.
equation to in terms
True.
of a vector and a matrix.
True.
Here, the solution that we derived is by is the intuition is guided by the simpler case, but it's not
Yes.
this is not actually a proof that this is the solution of the equation or anything.
Correct. So the proof lies in this remark here, which I did not go through in full detail perhaps. So, so let me just quickly go over that. Based on the analogy with y dot equal to AY, comparing it with V dot is equal to AV, and we propose a solution which is V is equal to e to the power of AT times V of 0 by analogy with y of t is equal to e to the power of AT times y of 0. Is it also okay so far?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So wait, who is speaking? I'm confused.
This is Anand.
Anand Balivada. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So now it remains to check whether this proposal is correct or wrong. Yeah. So two things need to be checked. One, the initial condition. And that is sort of obvious. If you put t equal to 0, then the e to the power of AT becomes e to the power of 0 becomes identity. So V of 0 will be V of 0. So initial condition is satisfied. It remains to check that the differential equation is also satisfied. Namely, does this formula satisfy the equation V dot is equal to AV? Now, formally, if you believe that differentiating a matrix is not very different from differentiating a number, then e to the power of AT derivative will be a e to the power of AT. And so that will be a times e to the power of AT V of 0. These remaining factors we will identify as V itself by definition, and therefore V dot is equal to AV. Okay. So modulo our ability to differentiate the exponential of a matrix, this does satisfy the desired equation. Now all it remains to check is that the derivative of e to the power of AT, where A is a matrix, is indeed given by A times e to the power of AT. Are you with me so far?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay, so that is all there is to be checked. Now you need to go back to definitions. What is e to the power of AT? Definition of e to the power of AT is this exponential series. It's just a series, sum of powers of A. Now we know how to differentiate these things. Yeah, each term you know how t to the power of n, you just bring n times t to the n minus 1 and add up all those terms. You do it on both sides, multiply out, you will see that all the terms match. Yeah, so that is the proof.
And as for it being the unique solution, it's that each of those, let's say because it's a 2 by 2 matrix, each of those 4 components is like the same reasoning you use for the that like y dot is equal to AY, you can use for each of these 4 components to say that the solution is unique, right?
Yeah. Okay. In a rough way, yes, that is true. See, we have not proved here that the solution is unique in a very rigorous manner. That is something one can do in a differential equations class. But yeah, it is similar to what you do for y dot equal to ay. Yeah, to prove that it is unique. So you are right. At this stage, we have only established that we do have a solution. You may have lingering doubts whether there is some other solution. That is not special to this. That is call into question a whole lot of things over here. It will mean that Newtonian evolution is not deterministic. If you know the initial state and the equation of motion, if you cannot predict the future, then there is something seriously wrong with Newtonian thought. But no, that does require a proof, and it is the sort of thing that is established more rigorously in differential equation. Not so difficult to do. You basically assume there are two solutions. I mean, for this linear equation, not so difficult. You assume there are two solutions, take that difference, and you can do some things with that. Yeah, so is at least the overall picture clarified for you?
It is, sir. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Okay.
Sir, I also
Yeah.
had a question.
Any question? Yes, please. Who is that?
Yeah, this is Sankalp.
Sankalp Sundar. Yes, please.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask, does this like generalize? Like, can we ask like, I mean, can we solve other differential equations by also considering like, the sign of a matrix or something?
Rather than sign of matrix, exponential of matrix does pretty well. But of course, it is restricted to first order equations. And more so than that, it is restricted to linear first order equations. So that linearity is extremely important. Otherwise, this analogy will not be of much use. Yeah, so it does work. It doesn't matter if it is second order, third order, fourth order. You can always reduce it to a system of first order equations and then apply the same reasoning. You will still get the exponential matrix. So the method is very, very general. But the key assumption is that the equations are linear. If that is not the case, you need more sophisticated methods.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah. Any other question? Yeah. If not, let us proceed to the next stage. Last time we were discussing the simple pendulum. Yeah, and we had set up the problem here. We had a horizontal x coordinate and a vertical y coordinate. And this is all in a frame at rest relative to the Earth. Okay, so just to make that clear, Z points out of the plane of the paper. We have an angle theta of deflection of the pendulum rod, and therefore a theta hat vector pointing this way, and a radially outward unit vector r hat at any point on the plane. In particular, here also there will be a radially outward unit vector r hat. Now, the length of the rod was fixed and assumed to be L. There's a tension T in the rod. Bob has mass M. And we resolved the force of gravity, which is pointing downwards, into its radially outward component mg cosine theta and mg sine theta, which is tangential and tending to bring the bob back to its equilibrium position. Okay, so that is why it is restoring. That is why it leads to oscillations and not simply growth. And we also found it useful to define an arc length S, which is L times theta, L being this length and theta this big angle. So S is equal to L theta is valid no matter whether the angle is small or big. It's a general formula. Okay, so this was our setup. This pendulum is moving in a plane. Yeah, it cannot move out of the plane. That has been stipulated from the beginning. Now, by using Newton's second law, we arrived at, we also mentioned that there are two general types of motion, which is qualitative time-dependent motion. One is libration, the other is rotation. And libration had to do with oscillation between a pair of turning points on either side of the vertical. And in that case, the bob was sort of trapped or bound to the point of equilibrium, stable equilibrium. We also had another kind of motion, which is called, by the way, we don't assume in libration that the oscillation is small. I mean, the bob can go all the way up to the horizontal and come down. Yeah, that's also very much allowed. Then in rotation, the energy and initial speed are sufficiently large that the bob can go round and round the pivot, in general at a non-uniform rate. Yeah, with the bob moving slower at the top and faster at the bottom. And the reason for this was provided last time. Yeah, so with this qualitative background, we use Newton's second law to derive the equation of motion. I will not go over that once again. I just remind you that the equation of motion is theta double dot is equal to minus g upon L sine theta. Here I should mention, as pointed out by Siddhant Shah, that this is theta of t. And here too, it is d squared by dt squared theta of t. So in this equation, t is called the independent variable. T doesn't depend on anything, whereas theta is called the dependent variable because theta is a function of time. Now, the important observation here is that among the parameters of the problem, the mass of the bob m cancelled out in writing the Newton equation, that basically made use of the assumption that the inertial mass that appears in the acceleration is related, in fact, equal to the gravitational mass that arises through the interaction of the bob with gravitational force of the earth, and cancelling that m, we arrived at this equation. And defining omega as square root of g upon L, we arrived at the equation in the form minus omega squared sine theta. We observed that this equation is highly nonlinear because of the sine function over here, but that is the equation that the physics is giving us, so we have to deal with it. In particular, as Galileo noticed, the time period of oscillation must be independent of the mass, no matter how large the oscillation is. We are not saying the time period is independent of amplitude. That is definitely not true. We are just saying the time period is independent of the mass. Okay, any question about the setup of the pendulum so far? Okay, if not, let me proceed to the next step. So far, we have described the equation of motion. It will be nice to talk about other physical observables, such as energy and angular momentum, which play an important role. So, like before, we will derive conserved energy from this equation of motion by the method of integrating factors. And the trick again is to multiply by the velocity theta dot and write the equation as theta dot theta double dot equal to minus omega squared sine theta theta dot. And observe that the left-hand side is actually a time derivative of theta dot squared upon 2. And the right-hand side then can similarly be accommodated as a time derivative of something, namely omega squared cosine theta. Right? If you differentiate this, you will get minus sine theta theta dot, which is precisely what we had here. Okay, so we have rewritten the equation of motion as the total time derivative of some quantity, namely half theta dot squared minus omega squared cosine theta equal to 0. Yeah, so the quantity in parentheses must be a constant, which is what we have written here. So this is the nice method of integrating factors. We have basically reduced order of equation from second to first. Yeah, this is what we did also for the harmonic oscillator before. They have done even generally for Newton's equation in deriving energy. So should not come as a surprise. I mean, we did it in general, not specifically the harmonic oscillator. We've done it in general for any potential V of x. Okay, so now we would like to interpret the constant of integration, this thing, as energy. Now, in order to do that in a nice way, it should have dimensions of energy to be physically interpreted as energy. So now as it stands, what is the dimension of this quantity? Please tell me.
Time inverse square.
Correct. T to the power of -2, that is Milnor. Yes, you're right. So we are not yet at the dimensions of energy. We need, energy has dimensions ml squared T to the -2. So we need to multiply by some constant having dimensions of ml squared. And there is an obvious candidate, namely mass of Bob times length of rod squared. So let us do precisely that. We will define a quantity E prime. I mean, prime doesn't define differentiation, it's just some variable. E prime as half ml squared theta dot squared minus ml squared omega squared cosine theta. Okay, so that is just copying this expression and multiplying by ml squared. You may say, why not multiply by 4 ml squared or 23 ml squared and so on. You are free to do whatever you like. It is just a convention to multiply by ml squared and not some other variable and not some numerical multiple thereof. Okay, so having done this, we have arrived at a proposed energy E prime. We can rewrite it in terms of our variable or angular frequency omega. Recall that omega was the square root of g upon L. So we can absorb some things or rather get rid of this omega. The L will cancel here. So you'll get mgl here. So the E prime can also be written as half ml squared theta dot squared minus mgl cosine theta. Yeah. So I want to mention that though the equation of motion was independent of the mass, our definition of energy so far does depend on the mass. Okay, and that is mostly because we put it there. It wasn't there, we simply multiplied and put it there. So the energy does depend on the mass, which is reasonable because dimensions of energy have to come out. Yeah, that still doesn't invalidate the fact that the actual dynamics doesn't depend on the mass. Time period is independent of the mass. Yeah, that is still true. It is just that our convenient definition of energy does depend on the mass. We have to be willing to accept that. Now, again, the definition of energy is partly up to us. Now, notice that the stable equilibrium situation, namely when theta is 0 and theta dot is 0. This is the stable equilibrium state. Yeah, where the bob is hanging vertically downwards and not moving at all. Yeah, that is what this means. In that state, if you evaluate E prime, this term is 0, whereas this term cosine of 0 gives you 1, so you will get minus mgl. So you'll have E prime is minus mgl. Okay, so we find that in the state of stable equilibrium, E prime is minus mgl. Now, your aesthetic sense may not like that very much, or at least for many people, we would like the energy at the state of stable equilibrium for the system when it's doing nothing to be 0. Okay, so it's convenient to choose the constant of integration so that the energy vanishes at the stable equilibrium state. So in other words, we want to add an mgl to this E prime to define our new energy E. Okay, so we'll define our new energy E as E prime plus mgl. Okay, so I hope you have followed the reasoning. Nothing deep here, but we do this many times. We redefine things according to our convenience. So we're going to define a new energy, a conserved total energy, as half ml squared theta dot squared, which is already present, minus mgl cosine theta, which is already there in E prime, plus this mgl, which is an additive constant. So it's an additive constant. Okay, so anyway, it was a constant of integration. I'm adding yet another constant to that, just for physical convenience. So this will be our proposed total conserved energy. The first term is what we call kinetic energy. And we can interpret that expression in a nice way. Indeed, if we recall that arc length was s equal to L theta, then our idea about kinetic energy is simply half mv squared, where v is equal to the rate of change of arc length, L theta dot. So putting that in, we will get half m L squared theta dot squared. Yeah, that's precisely what we had here. So we could have guessed this kinetic energy simply from this reasoning, half mv squared reasoning. But it is also what we got from the integrating factor. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, if not, let us now proceed to the potential energy, which is the remaining term here in equation 90. The potential energy has been defined as mgl times 1 minus cosine theta. Yeah, notice that it is a additive term in the energy. It's one more part of the energy. We have chosen to write the constant of integration in such a way that v vanishes. I mean, I'm defining this quantity as v, that it vanishes when the bob hangs downward at rest. Okay, so at that point, theta is 0, and therefore this vanishes. Okay, so that is how potential energy has been defined. It is time for now for us to plot this potential energy. So let us do that. Yeah, so let us plot this potential energy. So first, you please remind me, what is the range of theta?
0 to 2 pi.
Very good. 0 to 2 pi. With 0 and 2 pi physically identical, or the two are congruent modulo 2 pi. Okay, so 0 to 2 pi. Some people would prefer, because I defined the angle as the counterclockwise angle of deflection, to take, and this is an excellent choice. Another choice is you go from minus pi to pi. Okay. Anyway, there are many choices. You can choose what you like. We will continue with this one for now. Yeah. So now, okay, I said I was going to plot the potential. Let us do that. So here in this graph, this is theta. Theta is the 1 degree of freedom. It's a coordinate defining the 1 degree of freedom. I want to plot v of theta. So I go from pi upon 2, pi, 3 pi upon 2, and 2 pi. Okay, and v was mgl, it's all constants, times 1 minus cosine theta. Okay, so tell me at 0, theta equal to 0, we arranged it so that v is 0, right? So that is guaranteed, and equal to 2 pi is the same physically, so it must be the same. Now, please propose for me the shape of this v. Does it go up, down from 0?
Sir, it goes up.
Goes up. Okay, fine. So you have to tell me in what manner it goes up. Is it, I mean, is it, what's the tangent like at the origin? Is it flat? Is it
Flat, sir.
flat? Okay, very good. You say the tangent is flat. Okay, good. Yes. So you are proposing something like this. Do I get you right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So that must happen at both ends. Okay, and now, all right, very good. And so shall I, okay, you finish the story for me. Goes up, and does it ever become negative, by the way, this potential?
No, sir.
You're right, it never becomes negative because the cosine is always bounded between -1 and 1, and we are adding 1 to that, so it can never become negative. Furthermore, the largest this can become, the largest value we can take is how much?
MGL.
MGL indeed. Yes.
No,
That-
sir, 2 MGL.
Okay, that's better, 2 MGL, because cosine will at this sum can at most be 2, yeah, and cosine is -1. Very good. So here we are. Let me finish the graph. I think I have it. Do I have it right? Do you agree with me? Because you are welcome to correct it if I have it wrong.
Yes, sir.
Looks all right. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so that's where it is maximal. So it has a trough here at both ends. So I mean, this is a nice drawing, but so would the drawing with the minus pi to pi would also be nice. Let me draw that also. There's some advantages to that. Yeah, because then you will see, yeah, this is V of theta. This is 2 mgl. Okay, so in case you didn't understand, okay, does the picture look okay to all of you? In the second picture, I have just shifted my origin of theta to 0 as opposed to pi. It's anyway, the function V is periodic with period 2 pi. So please stare at these figures and tell me if you would like me to explain them further. So near theta equal to 0, what does this potential remind you of? Very close to theta equal to 0, what is the shape of the potential?
It is a stable equilibrium and kind of parabolic.
Exactly, yes. Near theta equal to 0, so theta equal to 0, yeah, after all, near theta equal to 0, you can approximate cosine theta as approximately 1 minus theta squared upon 2, right? For theta going to 0. Yeah, now the 1 is going to cancel out this 1 minus 1, and you are going to be left with V of theta approximately mgl theta squared upon 2, okay, which is a parabolic function. So that is what this is showing, parabolic function. Of course, it's valid only for small theta. Beyond that, the nonlinear effects become important. So that was not perhaps very evident here. I'm supposed to continue the graph there also. So that's the same thing we see here. Okay, we will remark upon this some more later on. But of course, for larger angles of deflection, the force is, so this corresponds to what kind of force?
A linear force.
Yeah, linear of what sort?
Linear in theta.
Correct. So I would call it physically linear, linear restoring, because the force the force is given by the negative gradient of the potential, am I right? And therefore, the force as a function of theta would be given by mgl theta with a minus sign. Okay. So, and the equation of motion, so this force, as theta increases, it is directed in the direction opposite to the increase in theta. So it points in the direction opposite to the increase of theta. That's why we call it restoring. It is linear because the force itself is linear. Yeah. So, but in general, it is neither linear. I mean, it is not linear. It is restoring. It's always restoring, but it's not linear. Okay. Any question about this physical reasoning and the plotting? See, the plotting is easy to do. You draw a graph of cosine theta, then you put a minus sign. So you flip it about the y-axis, about the x-axis, yeah, upside down. Then you shift it up by 1. Yeah, that is what you do to get this graph. Any question about how we drew this graph?
So instead of talking about minus pi to pi, we can just talk about 0 to pi only. Like it's equivalent on both sides.
You're right. Both are equivalent. Yes, you can use whatever you're comfortable with. For some purposes, certain features are more evident in one formulation than in another. In particular, the shape being parabolic is perhaps a little more evident when you look from minus pi to pi. Okay, So for those small reasons, you may prefer one formulation over another, but it doesn't matter. Whatever you're comfortable with, you can. In fact, you should be comfortable with both. Let's put it that way. Okay, but they are equivalent. Okay, so having now defined our concept of energy and split it into kinetic and potential energy, we now make the observation that the extrema of the potential, as always, the extrema of the potential, namely points where V prime vanishes, correspond to equilibria. When I say equilibria, I mean when there is no force. Yeah, because the force is the negative derivative of V. So in our case, V prime, if we compute it, we are going to get mgl sine theta, which I just wrote down here. Now, when does that happen to vanish? Well, from the figure, I think it is clear. It vanishes here, slope is 0 there, here, and this place. So at these three locations, namely when theta is 0 or theta equal to pi or minus pi, which are identical. So these are the two physical situations, theta equal to 0 and theta equal to pi. They are the places where there is no force, and they physically correspond to the bob pointing vertically downwards, namely theta is 0, or vertically upwards, theta equal to pi. Okay. So we have identified the points of equilibrium. When I say equilibrium, I mean where the particle feels no force. Equilibrium doesn't mean stable equilibrium. That is a further qualification. In fact, we have already argued that this point is a point of stable equilibrium, namely the bob pointing downwards, stable, whereas the one with the bob pointing upwards is unstable. And that is now also fairly clear from our figure. Here, theta equal to pi is a maximum of the potential, so no wonder it's an unstable equilibrium point. This is a minimum of the potential, so it's a stable equilibrium point. Yeah. So, any question about how we found equilibria or classified them as stable, unstable? Okay.
Sir, I have a doubt in the expression of f of theta.
Yes, Adarsh, yes.
In the RHS, the dimension is not of force, rather it is of energy.
So sad. Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I need to fix that up. Let us do that as we go along. Okay. Can you tell me where my mistake was, or yeah, okay, let me write proportionally here for now. And it's not really correct. I agree with you. So first, do you agree that this V has dimensions of energy? Is that okay, first of all?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that has dimensions of energy. Good. So I should have differentiated with respect to something that has dimensions of length to get a force, right?
Yes.
Yeah, whereas I differentiated with respect to theta. What's the dimension of theta?
Nothing, dimensionless.
Correct. Yes, Adarsh. Yeah, it's dimensionless. So no wonder I didn't get a force. Yeah. If I differentiate with respect to dimensionless variable, I will not get something which has dimensions of force. So yeah, so that was the problem. So strictly speaking, this is not a physical force. Okay, it's not completely wrong either. It's a kind of angular version of the force. Yeah. So I will, if you like, just as a temporary fix, I could have differentiated not with respect to theta, I could have differentiated with respect to L theta, and then fixed it up that way. Okay. Yeah. So that would be one way to handle this. But your point is well taken. Okay, do you understand why I went wrong? At least that much?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So yeah. Now, okay, just a second. Yeah. So look, if you wanted to define a force, one option would have been to define the force at angle theta to be something like minus dv by dl theta. Okay, I mean, where I'm thinking of S as L theta. Okay, S is the displacement, angular displacement. I mean, it's the arc length. And if I differentiate with respect to that, the L will go away and you will get f of theta as minus mg theta. Okay, now this one does have dimensions of a force. Mass times acceleration is a force. It is linear and it is restoring. Okay, so this might have been a slightly better definition. Yeah, is that better, at least dimension wise?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But now let us, I mean, clearly the system likes angular variables. So let us move towards angular variables where many discussions are more convenient. And that is what we will do right now. Yeah, let us talk about angular momentum. Okay, so let us define the angular momentum of this bob. Suppose r is the radius vector or position vector of the bob. So r is given by L times r hat. Yeah, this was L and this was the unit vector r hat. Okay, so r is L times r hat. Now we need the velocity also, and this is being defined with respect to the pivot or the origin. So the pivot is the origin. Now we also need its velocity. The velocity of the bob, instantaneous velocity, is the rate of change of the position, and it is directed tangentially. So tangential or azimuthal direction. So v is proportional to theta hat, and it has a precise value, s dot times theta hat, because theta hat. Yeah, because s was the displacement, the arc length. So the rate of change of arc length will give you the speed. So this is the rate of change of arc length. So this is our velocity vector, and we already have the radius vector, L r hat. So with these two pieces of information, we can compute the momentum of this bob. Okay, actually the momentum, we don't even need the second piece of information. The momentum is simply mass times velocity. So this would be ms dot theta hat. And substituting for s dot, we would get it as ml theta dot theta hat. Okay, so that is the linear momentum. So now we are ready to compute the angular momentum, which we do now here. By the way, before I proceed, I wanted to mention one more thing in this figure, which I did not do before. In this figure I have plotted here, I have used the notation, I mean, a convention of going from minus pi to pi theta. This is, of course, the regime of linear restoring forces. Yeah, this is a more nonlinear regime. But here the angle is still confined to a certain range around theta equal to 0. So this is all trapped motion. Around stable equilibrium. So if the energy is such that the oscillation is of this sort, then we have only libration. Okay, so as the energy increases, the amplitude is going to grow, but you still have libration. That is, there are a pair of turning points. So these are the turning points. Yeah, so this is the theta max. And this is minus theta max. Yeah, where I assume that theta max is some positive angle, minus theta max. Okay, so this is a oscillation between turning points. This kind of oscillation is called libration. Now, when the energy exceeds 2 mgl, this is the energy 2 mgl, at which point the potential turns down. When the energy exceeds that, then there are no turning points at all. That is when you go from libration to rotation. So when the energy exceeds 2 mgl, you go from libration to rotation. So is that interpretation helpful and clear to you in terms of the graph of the potential energy? Any question about that? Okay, that corresponds to our intuition from before. I'm just establishing it using the graph now. Okay, so now let us return to our calculation of angular momentum. Angular momentum L about the pivot is defined as R cross P. So for R, I substitute, recall R was L R hat. And for P, I substitute the formula we have derived previously, which was ML theta dot theta hat. So multiplying the two, I have to make use of this basic fact that R hat cross theta hat is what? As the fingers curl from R to theta, the thumb of my right hand points outwards, which is defined as Z hat. Are you okay with this? Okay. So as a consequence, we have a formula for L. It is given by ML squared theta dot R hat cross theta hat. So ML squared theta dot Z hat. Okay. Now this coefficient we will call P theta. Yeah, because it is a kind of angular momentum. I mean, it is angular momentum, but to denote that angular nature, we put a theta below the P. That is a convention at this stage. It has some deeper meaning, but for now, we will just call it P theta. Yeah. So there we are. This is our angular momentum. Okay. Any question about how we got this formula for angular momentum? Okay, so please tell me, is angular momentum of this bob conserved?
No, sir.
Okay, is the linear momentum of the bob conserved?
No, sir.
Neither is conserved. Okay, why isn't the linear momentum conserved?
Because there is a force on the bob.
Exactly, yeah. So linear momentum, P is not conserved. It's conserved as there exists a force. And now you are saying that L is also not conserved. And what is the reason for that?
There's torque.
Okay, Shubham, is that Shubham?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so earlier it was Milanpal, here now Shubham says that there is a torque. So indeed, we had derived the equation of motion for L, which said that d by dt of L is equal to torque. And in this case, the torque is not zero. Yeah, so that is why L is not conserved. That is one way to look at it.
What if we choose our axis of rotation on the particle, then the net torque is zero?
But that can be true only at one instant of time. At the next instant of time, the position of the particle would have changed and your origin will lag behind. Yeah, so sadly, you will need to move your origin along with the bob. Now, that is not what we have in mind. Do you see the problem?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we want a fixed origin. I mean, the particle may move, but we want a fixed origin. And if you locate the origin at the current location of the particle, you are right that angular momentum at that moment of time may be zero, but at the next instant, the particle will move around. So this will no longer be true. Yeah. Okay, and but in this case, we have still not even computed the torque. Let us do that. So let us retain the origin as the pivot and try to compute these things. Okay, so as we have been proposing, but still not shown in detail, the angular momentum is not conserved since there is a non-zero torque about the pivot. Now, the force on the bob is the resultant of the radially inward tension and the vertically downward force of gravity. So to include both of them. Okay, so now the tension force does not produce any torque as it points towards the pivot. Okay, so the tension force does not produce any torque. Whereas the weight of the bob, the downward force of gravity does produce a torque. Gravity provides a non-zero torque that tends to restore the pendulum to its equilibrium position. So let us compute this. Tau is equal to R cross F. And okay, so recall that R, let me write down the formula here. R vector was L R hat, and the force due to gravity was given by, well, in this case, the only part of the gravitational force that contributes, I mean, which one contributes, the tangential or vertical component of gravity? Sorry, tangential or radial component of gravity? Which one contributes to the torque?
Tangential
The
component.
tangential component.
Precisely, yeah. So several of you have proposed that it's a tangential one. So tangential gravity alone contributes to torque. Yeah, the radial gravity is parallel to the radius vector, and therefore the cross product is 0. Cross product is 0. Okay, so we might as well just take the tangential component and the R vector and take the cross product between them. So the force is the force then will be given by mg sine theta, that is in the tangential direction but with a minus sign. Okay, yeah, so that is the force, tangential gravitational force. So if I take the cross product R cross F, I'm going to get mgl sine theta with a minus sign R cross theta, which was Z. Okay, so here we are. Any question about how we computed this torque? So this is the torque. So the rate of change of angular momentum is equal to this quantity. Okay. So for just to get some intuition, let us suppose the angle is small. Suppose theta is let's suppose is positive for convenience, and let it suppose it is small compared to pi upon 2. That is, the bob is somewhere here. Now what effect is the torque going to have on the angular momentum? Yeah, is it going to increase the magnitude of angular momentum or decrease the magnitude of angular momentum?
So decrease the angular momentum.
Okay, yeah, that is basically correct. Yes. So L dot is equal to torque. Yeah, I mean, there are many ways to think about this. I mean, either you can use the equation itself and argue, or if you want to go back to thinking in terms of momentum and position, the restoring force is such that Wait a minute. Why did you say that? What was that, Shubham? Okay, the question was one concerning angular momentum, right? Yeah. Okay, maybe I have to be a bit clearer about what I'm asking. I'm not sure I asked my question very clearly. I need to be clearer. Okay, you have answered some question, but I am not sure which question I asked. Okay, I think I have to be clearer. The sense of the motion, that is the particle going this way or is it going this way? Yeah, perhaps without that information, this question cannot be very clearly answered. Anyway, Shubham had given some answer. Would you like
Yes, sir,
to?
I had by mistake taken one direction. I mean, it was going up. I had taken it.
Okay. That is fine. Okay. So let us be a bit clear here. Okay, I don't want to mystify these things too much. Yeah, here is our formula for angular momentum. It is very clear from the formula that L is, at least the size of L is proportional to theta dot. So if theta is increasing, the angular momentum would be increasing in size, whereas if theta dot is negative, that it is turning downwards, the angular momentum in magnitude would be decreasing. So there is not much more to that. You could also deduce it using the formula for torque. But yeah, the answer does depend on which way the particle is moving. Okay.
Sir?
Yeah, no, even that is not a completely clear answer. No, I'm sorry, because theta dot itself could be negative. I'm sorry. Yeah. What is Gautam saying?
Sir, no, so intuitively, I would think that when the particle is going down, its angular momentum will be increasing.
Okay.
That seems to be in contradiction to what we've just discussed. So I was wondering where my intuition is breaking down.
No, your intuition may not be wrong after all. I have been a bit. I'm sorry, I have been very imprecise in both my question and answer. So this is not a very correct way of speaking. See, theta dot, when you're going upwards, theta dot is increasing. Theta is increasing, so theta dot is positive. So that is all we were saying. When theta is coming downwards, theta dot is negative. Now, that doesn't establish whether, that doesn't say very much, unfortunately. Yeah. So let's put it this way. Let's use our physical intuition. When the bob is moving downwards, it is actually, is it speeding up or slowing down?
It's speeding up, sir.
It's speeding down, yeah. So the magnitude of momentum is actually increasing. So as a consequence, its angular momentum also should be increasing. Okay, at least in magnitude. So I think that is the intuition you had proposed.
Yes,
is
sir.
that right? Yeah. So I believe that intuition is correct. Yeah, that intuition is correct. On the other hand, when the particle is moving upwards, though theta dot is positive, the particle is actually slowing down, and therefore its angular momentum, first of all, is decreasing, and its angular momentum is also decreasing.
Can we try to think it in terms of alpha, the angular acceleration, like?
Yeah, that may be. Sure.
So,
yeah, that may be a preferable approach. Yes. Yeah. Because the equation is really saying ml squared. Okay, I hesitate to do this. I hesitate to do this too much because I gave this as a problem in the homework sheet. So let me not do too much of this business here. But yeah, you're right. You can think in terms of the angular acceleration, theta double dot, and using that answer the question as well. You are right. I think that was, sorry, who was that? Shakti Chauhan? Yes, you're right. It has to do with the acceleration. Yeah. So, okay, I think I have done two things. I have confused you and then tried to unconfuse you a little bit, and then tried to leave you to do it in the homework. Okay, so tell me, is there something I should still try to resolve for you?
So just a question about like the ml square theta dot, that thing, that equation over there. Should we
Yes,
be putting a
yes.
minus sign over there to make the intuition of like when it's going down, it's speeding up, and so like the change should be positive. The change in angular momentum should be positive. And if so, I mean,
Okay. Wait. I think you've gone very fast. Okay. So first, your question is this formula correct at all? Is there some sign wrong over here?
Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Let us first address that question. I hope there is no sign mistake. Is anybody else also observing a sign mistake? Okay. L is R cross P. So R was L R hat, and P was ML theta dot theta hat. That looks okay. So then when we take the cross product, R cross P, you'll get R cross theta, which points along Z. So yeah, no, this formula looks all right. ML squared theta dot, yeah, this formula looks all right. So you are asking about whether this formula corresponds to your intuition or not.
Yes, sir. And actually, when you were saying for the momentum,
Yes.
there also it seems like intuition is not holding, because the theta dot is still positive when the particle is going up, which means the momentum should also.
No. Look, when I say momentum, I mean magnitude of momentum. I'm supposed to look at this quantity, ML magnitude of theta dot. Okay, so let us take this formula a little bit. Okay, so yeah, I mean, looking at this vector, one can get a bit misled. Okay, so the question is, when moving up, yeah, theta is increasing, but speed is decreasing. Do you agree with that, Gautam?
Yes, sir.
Speed is decreasing. So the magnitude of theta dot is falling.
Okay.
And so the magnitude of momentum is falling. Is that okay?
Yes, sir. I think I see. Yeah. Okay.
That is the intuition you and I think the rest of us have. So that is all there is to it. We have to be very careful when writing a vector formula and then interpreting the magnitude.
Okay, I think I see where I was not able to make the connect, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Now I
fine.
get it. Yeah.
Okay, fine. Very good. Okay, so for everybody else's benefit, any question about this issue? When the particle is moving upwards, yeah, that is going from here to there in this direction. Theta is increasing, but the speed of the particle is decreasing. So theta dot in magnitude is actually falling. And so the momentum is also following, and P theta, or the angular momentum, is also decreasing in magnitude. So that is the story here. Okay. So now the question I originally posed, which Shubham answered, my question was asked in a very careless way. I apologize for that. Okay, but now let us provide yet more intuition and further features of the system. So we have argued that the angular momentum is not conserved. Yeah, so we are in agreement on that because there's a non-zero torque which we even computed. However, as you go from libration to rotation and increase the energy, if you increase the energy of motion very substantially, then it turns out that in the limit of high energies, when I say high energies, I mean energies much larger than potential energy, and an estimate of potential is MGL. After all, energy was MGL times 1 minus cosine theta, right? This was V of theta. So the size of this always is between 0 and 2 MGL. Yeah, so MGL is an estimate of the energy, order of magnitude estimate. Now, if the energy is much more than MGL, then most of the energy is kinetic, right? if your energy is much more than mgl, then potential energy is minimal, is very negligible. Most of the energy is kinetic. In that situation, we may ignore the small gravitational force, which is what is responsible for the potential energy, and also ignore the negligible torque that the gravitational force produces. Okay, so in limit of high energies, can ignore gravitational torque. Okay, are you comfortable with this argument? Any question about that? High energies? Okay, so in that case, the limit of high energies, the rate of change of angular momentum, which is given by the torque, must be approximately 0. Okay. So in that limit, we should be able to see that the angular momentum component p theta is conserved. And this is true even intuitively at very high energies. The pendulum is simply going round and round very, very fast. Okay. And the difference between up and down becomes negligible because the gravitational force here and there differ only by 2 mgl, whereas my energy is very, very high compared to that. Okay. So in that case, in that limit, the pendulum executes nearly uniform, I should say nearly uniform circular motion at high angular speed, theta dot, which is much, much more than omega. So omega was a frequency that we had already computed. It is a kind of setting the scale. At high energies, the angular velocity of the bob is much, much more than omega. Alternatively, that I can derive that equation from here. Yeah, just let us see how you get it. You will get that this equation would become theta dot squared is much, much more than g upon L. Yeah, masses cancel, 2 goes there, which says that theta dot much, much more than root 2 times root of g upon L, which is root 2 omega. Okay, so if this inequality is satisfied, I can throw away the root 2 and conclude that theta dot is much, much more than omega at high energies. Okay, is that argument okay? That at high energies, the angular speed is much more than omega. Okay, so then let us see this in a actual figure. I have actually solved the equations of motion, those nonlinear equations, and plotted here the angular momentum p theta of the bob as a function of time. So the horizontal axis is time. And I've done this for different energies. Energy is conserved, so for different energies I can do this. I've plotted here p theta as a function of time. So this is p theta as a function of time. You will so remember that p theta was given by ml squared theta dot. So I'm basically plotting that. Now, from this figure, can you tell me which curves correspond to libration and which to rotation? Please think and tell.
Sir, I think you already told that E, if it is greater than 2, it is rotation, and then if E is less than 2, it's libration.
You're right, you're right. Okay, very good. So yes, based on what we have already discussed, but this point may not have been observed or caught by everybody. So this curve is libration. This dotted curve is also libration. The other curves, this dashed curve, this one and this one, these are all rotation. Yeah, but I want to clarify this from the figure itself. Indeed, we had argued previously that if the energy exceeds 2 mgl, then you have rotation. Now, what is a feature of rotation? Let us understand what a feature of rotation is. In rotational motion, what can you say about theta dot? Can you suggest a feature of theta dot in rotational motion?
I think like theta dot doesn't go to 0 anywhere.
Correct. So in rotational motion, theta dot has a particular sign, always positive or always negative. Now you tell me, what is the physical meaning of theta dot positive and theta dot negative?
These are the different rotation. One is clockwise and then the other is anti-clockwise.
Precisely, yes, that is correct, Shubham. So let us draw the picture. Here is my bob. This is the angle theta. If theta dot is always positive, it means theta is always increasing this way. It may go round and round. Yeah. So this is called counter clockwise rotational motion. And that corresponds to theta dot always positive. We are not saying theta dot is a constant. All we are saying is always positive. That corresponds to counterclockwise rotational motion. On the other hand, if theta dot is always decreasing, it means that the bob is moving this way. Yeah, so theta dot negative. So this corresponds to clockwise rotational motion. So if theta dot has a definite sign, it implies that p theta also has a definite sign. So tell me, at energy 16 in this graph, this curve I have drawn here, what kind of motion are we describing? You can suggest, I mean, are we describing libration or rotation? Are we describing, yeah, so let's get the answer to that first.
Sir, it's rotation since 6 is greater than the other.
Correct, yeah. Here, by the way, in this figure, I have taken m equal to 1, g equal to 1, and L equal to 1. Okay, so those are the units being used in this figure for our convenience. In any case, the point is that 16 is more than 2, and therefore this has to be rotation. And among the rotation, we had discussed two possibilities, namely clockwise and counterclock. So tell me which one is being described here.
Yeah, it's clockwise because theta dot is positive. So
Correct.
Yeah.
Indeed. Sorry, who was that? Milan? No.
So it was Ruptak.
Ruptak, yeah. Okay, so Ruptak has it right. So since theta dot is positive, p theta is also positive. And in fact, here it has a value between 5 and 6. And therefore, theta dot has to be positive. And therefore, it must describe counterclockwise motion. Okay, so both of these figures correspond to counterclockwise motion. In fact, all of these three figures correspond to counterclockwise rotational motion. Yeah. On the other hand, the two figures at the very bottom, this dotted curve and this solid curve correspond to librational motion. And in librational motion, theta dot can have one sign for some time and then another sign for another time, because the particle oscillates. It goes this way, that way. Theta dot positive, theta dot negative, theta dot positive, theta dot negative. Okay, so that is the story here. But the key feature that I want to emphasize is that as the energy increases, see, energy is 2.1 here in this curve. Energy is 6 in this curve. Energy is 16 in this curve. We are noticing that the range of angular momentum is becoming lesser and lesser as we go to higher and higher energies. Okay, so I hope it is not a surprise then for you that for very large energies, the angular momentum may not be exactly constant, but it is going to fluctuate around a mean value with very small deviations, which then recovers our intuitive expectation that at high energies in this limit, the angular momentum component P theta is conserved at very high energies. Okay, so that is what this figure is conveying to you. At very high energies, angular momentum is an approximately conserved quantity. So please ask any question about this if it is not clear. Yeah, in many systems, quantity may not be conserved, but it is then a part of our job to find some situation where it's approximately conserved. Study that situation first and then go to the more general situation. Okay, so these are the kinds of tricks and methods that a physicist learns to exploit. Okay, and improve your intuition that way. Okay, so I think I have now run out of time, sadly. Okay, I should not continue too much. Okay, my intention was to talk about small oscillations, which we already began doing. I'll do it next time then. Okay, any other questions right now? I hope I have not left you confused about these things. Please feel free to ask any questions. Okay. All right. In that case, we will stop this class now and join once again for the next lecture on Tuesday. Once again, there is something. There's a question from Naveen Surya. Sir, is attendance in your lectures matters or not? Of course, it does matter. I take attendance on all lectures, so it does matter. Yeah. Okay, so now we shall close this lecture and meet on Tuesday. Please do your yes question. Yes, please go ahead.
Sorry, no, I have a doubt. You said
Yes.
as the range decreases, as P theta tends to or it gets really big, it becomes a constant, right? So how exactly are we interpreting the range as angular momentum?
Okay, no, wait. Look, I'm plotting the angular momentum as a function of time. Is that okay, first of all?
Yeah.
Okay, so now you can ask, see, this is not a constant function. It's an oscillating function. That much we agree upon.
Yeah.
So you can ask, when would I like to consider an oscillating function to be approximately constant? Okay, so we need some definition of that. If the change in P theta compared to the value of P theta, mean value of P theta is small, then we will say it is a function with very small fluctuations. That is an approximately constant function. So look at this graph. Here, the oscillations of P theta are fairly big. Okay, this is of this magnitude, and which are almost comparable to the mean value itself. I mean, the mean value was roughly 1 over here, and the fluctuations are also of order half or 1. Whereas up here, the energy at energy 16, the mean value is around 5. The fluctuations are less than 0.5, maybe even a quarter. So if you like, the RMS deviation is very small. So we can treat it as an approximately constant quantity.
Yes, sir.
Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good question. Yeah. Any other question? Okay, Siddhant had pointed out some errors, small errors in the lecture notes. I will correct them. Any other error you had to point out, Siddhant?
Not yet, sir. I'll get to the notes after. So if there's something, I'll mail it to you.
Okay, thank you. I like your answer. Not yet, in anticipation of further errors. Okay, thank you. Okay, so enjoy but please look at the question problem sheet 7 and please work those answers out. Don't leave it to the last moment. All right, any other questions now?
Sir, could you repeat what you said? I couldn't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. All I said is that I like your answer, which you said that you have not yet found any more mistakes. So because in anticipation of finding more mistakes in the problem sheet or in the lecture notes, I liked your answer that you have not yet found any more mistakes.
Not yet, as in like today, like during the discussion, if like I read more and then there's a doubt or something, I'll let you know. Not more like correction, but like doubts or something.
Fine. Okay, you are welcome to do so. Okay, thank you. All right. Any other thing here at this point? Okay, so please take care and keep well. I don't know, in Chennai, I'm told that the water is contaminated, and I was sick for last couple of days. That's the reason I'm doing this from home. I hope others do not fall sick because of the rains and so on. Yeah, Shakti Chauhan has said that he was not able to attend some previous lectures, had some personal problems. Okay, we will deal with it. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, please go ahead and have a good afternoon. We will continue next time.
Thank you, sir. I hope you feel better soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Take care, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. All the best. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yes.